Hi, my name is Daniel O'Connor, Director here at Transform CDE and Action Net Zero, and welcome to the First Era podcast. I'm joined today by
Katie Calvert-Jones, Head of External Engagement for the School of Management, University of Bath.
And Michelle Powell, Business Development Manager, also for the University of Bath in the School of Management.
So Dan, Michelle, I'd love to hear more about what we can look forward to in our first Era Network meeting on the 29th of February.
Well, it's going to be hugely exciting. We've been planning this for several months now. In fact, since June 23, since our first event. And this has been the kind of culmination of months and months of planning to bring people together to discuss the challenges they're facing across the kind of plethora of net zero topics, with the full intention of giving them something that will help actually action those challenges, to support and drive change, particularly within our region. But it could even go wider than that. It could have impact across the nation.
So Dan, I can see you nodding there. Tell me more about the past. Where did this come from? Where did this start?
So I'm a director of Transform CDE, which is Transform Communications, Transform Digital Marketing and Transform ESG. And this really stemmed from the ESG side of things. Coupled alongside that, I'm also a director of Action Net Zero, which is a partner company of Transform ESG. So if we take this all the way back to November 22, myself, Pam Barbato, founder of Action Net Zero, and Veronica Hannon, my business partner, across the Transform group of companies, were invited to speak at an event in Cheltenham in November. And it was very focused, or the attendance was very focused around SMEs. And we were talking about big subjects that organisations should or could be considering, particularly around ESG. And at the end of the session, it was all very well and good, and we had some great conversations, made some great connections, but we thought, if we could take this to a larger audience, to larger businesses in the Southwest, what impact could we have? Because it's very well speaking about things, but we actually need to action things. And to action things, what we all have found out is that we need to collaborate. So it's a share, it's a hive mind. Where is the knowledge? How can we transfer that knowledge to be able to affect change? So the idea, and it was just an idea, stood in the middle of a conference room in Cheltenham, was I wonder if we could approach the University of Bath to hold an event at the University of Bath with larger businesses, utilising the businesses that we know and the businesses that you know, and beyond that, so that we could convene said people in a room, not for half an hour, not for an hour, not just talking at them, but get their experiences out on the table of what these organisations were doing. And we were very lucky with the help of Michelle in particular, with her business connections, to be able to convene 44 of some of the largest employers in one room for 5 hours, which is pretty much unheard of when you're talking about C-suite. And the feedback at the end of said session was that we need more of that. And that was from ourselves, from the university, from the businesses, from WECA, from Baines, who were all in attendance. Sorry, I'm just kicking my guest here on the podcast. And it was, how can we do more of that, and how can we actually affect change? So over many months of meetings, I think it is.
One or two.
One or two. We sat down and we have created together the Era Network. And the Era Network is an invitation of 12 organisations whereby they will come to a Chatham House rules type environment to talk about challenges that they are facing and how do we as organisations and the academics and the students of the university, how do we find solutions to said problems. So it's a big ask, it's a big event, but will be incredible. And then on from the 29th of February, we will have another meeting with the cohort in April. And then the big event is the summit in June, whereby we will be convening 100 plus organisations so that we can share the knowledge and transfer the knowledge of what has been learnt, implemented. Some of these projects will be massive, so they'll take months and months and maybe years to implement and complete. But what have we learnt so far, and how do we hopefully transfer that knowledge to affect change more quickly with larger and smaller organisations? So it's not just about the large organisations. My organisation that I head up here with Veronica, we only employ 14 people, but what can we learn to then affect change in our own business and the community?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a circular process, isn't it? It's not about having the meeting in February, April, summit in June and stop. This is something that we see as being something that it will be, this is the era of net zero, for example. Next year might be something different, but it's going to be a continuous process of finding those challenges, supporting the businesses via student projects, research, via the university, via Transform, via Action Net Zero, and then finding some of the answers to those challenges, helping to deliver on those, and then coming back and asking the questions again. Is it supporting? Is it having an impact? And then circle goes around time and time again.
Exactly that.
So, Michelle, you've started to hint at some of the ways we might work with these organisations within ERA. I head up external engagement for the School of Management within the University of Bath, so I'm very well aware of the number of ways we work with businesses locally, nationally, and indeed internationally. Part of that might be through research, part of that through students and students engaging with organisations, two of the ways you've just mentioned there. Can you go into any more detail on both of those, particularly I think with the student-focused piece as to how students might work with ERA?
Absolutely. So, from a School of Management point of view, we're sort of helping to support and drive this project, but this is very much a university initiative. So the intention is that once we understand what those challenges are for the companies we're working with, we can then start to use some of the initiatives within the university to help deliver on those. So that might be something like a vertical integrated project where you might have students and academics working on it from across the university and across faculties. So that opens up some instant ways of getting sort of really sort of cross-pollination of thinking, diversity of thought, different capabilities, different skills, all coming together to sort of really answer and come up with some solutions to those challenges. So that's one mechanism. Others might be via curriculum-based learning. So there could be projects. We have, just even within the School of Management, MSc Sustainability, and they run projects every single year. So it could be that some of these challenges are given to those students as projects that they can work on as part of their curriculum. Or it could be that we run a sort of ad hoc student challenge. So for the last 4 years, I've run something called Invictus Challenge, which has taken various different routes, some of which is student business ideas. But just recently, we gave students the challenge of coming up with a solution to sustainability and improving sustainability at the university. And so we could actually put some of these projects out in that sort of nature, so that you've got sort of short, sharp sprint type projects and solutions coming out of that. But a multitude of ways that we can work with the students.
That's great. And what about the company side? So which type of organisations and companies have we got involved so far?
So we've got quite a range of sectors and industries involved. So we're not just saying we can solve all of the problems for professional services. professional services, if you look at scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, if you look at supply chain, if you look at nature and biodiversity, are probably a little bit simpler to tackle rather than somebody that's heavily involved in infrastructure, buildings, stranded assets, etc., etc., etc. So we've got everybody from the likes of a large shoe manufacturer through to one of the largest engineering companies in the area, including one of the largest manufacturing companies in the area. There's quite a broad scope of organisations there. But I think going back to what Michelle was saying slightly, and I'm sorry to backtrack, it is that ability to bring the students in and the academics with the knowledge that is already deep seated there, but also transferring that into the businesses. And I was very privileged to be a part of the Big Team Challenge up at the university a few months ago. And I took a real life problem of one of our clients who were involved in the ERA network, and it was around how they could decarbonise their transport. And it was particularly around bringing the employees to work. It's a factory that has a split shift, a 6 to 2 and a 2 to 10. There are 800 people that need to arrive at this factory every single day. So how could we decarbonise that? It was a problem and a challenge that we had faced. We had helped them to get on their journey to overcome that challenge. And the solutions that the students came back with in an hour were almost identical to the ones that had taken us months to come up with and implement. And the students were putting these on the table, going, I think you should do this, I think you should do this. And we go, that's what we did. That's genuinely what we did. So how do we extract that knowledge and that ideas factory back into the businesses and get the businesses working with the students so that the students, when they finish their degrees or whatever they're doing, they're then in direct connection with the organisations to hopefully have a place at the table to start their journey in their careers.
I think that's the thing, is that the students, especially, they just bring such a fresh perspective on things. You know, they're so in touch with sustainability on the whole anyway.
Miles ahead of our generation.
Absolutely miles ahead. And it was just so interesting at the Big Team Challenge, just seeing them come up with that thought. And it was like, well, why wouldn't you do that? Well, nobody thought of it before. But they're so clever at coming up with new suggestions. Just at the Invictus Challenge last week, 3 completely different proposals to, deliberately broad challenge of how do you improve sustainability across the University of Bath, but they took it from 3 completely different directions. And the idea that students could engage with companies on their challenges and come up with completely different proposals, again, is quite an interesting proposition, I think.
And as an employer myself, and for a lot of the large employers that we work with, that one of their biggest problems, the biggest challenges is employee attraction and retention. So if they've got direct access to a pool of incredibly intelligent minds and people that are ready to go and jump straight into the workplace and into their workforce, why would you not want to be a part of that? It's insanity if you don't, because we all know that a lot of people will study in Bath or Bristol or surrounding area, and at that age their goal is, I have to get to London. We know they come back, they get to a certain age, go, I'll go back to have my family and have somewhere a bit more quieter and a bit more relaxed. But it's how do we retain that level of employees in the area that at the moment seem to migrate away every time they graduate.
Yeah, they do. And that's partly because they just don't know all the time what's on their doorstep. They don't know of the companies, short of some of the really big names. They don't know about some of the really creative, really interesting businesses that are literally in the Bath and Bristol region. So it's another exciting mechanism for companies to actually get in front of students and for them to realise what's available to them.
Absolutely.
Employment.
So we've spoken a bit about the value of the students being put in contact with the organisations and the sort of free flow of information there. What about the power of the network itself between the organisations, between the companies? What benefits do you think that brings?
I think it's huge. Just talking to 2 of the companies that are going to be taking part, both are manufacturing firms, but one manufactures shoes and the other one makes meals. both are quite different, but actually when we spoke, they had very similar challenges. Both are looking at supply chain, both are looking at how they can track where their supply chain is coming from. And I think very different things, they're making very different things, but actually they've got very similar challenges. And the idea of bringing them together under one roof, allowing that conversation to take part, which actually probably wouldn't ordinarily take place, but actually bringing that joining of ideas, allowing them to compare, contrast, maybe even work together potentially, but bringing those challenges into one place. I think it'd be really interesting for them.
Definitely. And whilst probably most of the organisations that are attending this era on the 29th and then the summit on the 6th of June, whilst they are very much on their journeys already from an ESG, sustainability, climate change, action reports and all of the wonderful things that they're doing, they still don't know the answers to everything, unfortunately. And there are answers out there that nobody has. And the general public and the general consensus is that it's down to the government and the councils to overcome and solve these problems or challenges that we are facing, but it's not. It's absolutely down to us as individuals, whether you are a business owner or an employee of a business, and whether you have a business with 14 like ours or whether you have a business of 40,000 employees like some of the attendees of this ERA network have. It's about change and behavioural change throughout the organisation, which then floods out into the communities. So, and it can be any of the most simplest things you've ever imagined. We did an audit for, I won't mention the name, but a very large publication, a magazine. And when we went to their offices in London and we were asking questions around what they do on a day-to-day basis, even down to the most simplest of things, they were saying when it gets to proofing and edit day before they release the magazine that month, the team will drink between 7 to 8 cups of coffee. Fantastic. So how are they consuming this? Well, we all go up to the coffee and we grab our paper cup, or our plastic cup. It was a plastic cup, and we fill it up and we drink that and we throw it in the bin. And there were 150 people in this office. So that's 150 times 7 plastic cups per day that they were consuming, when the simple answer is buy everybody a cup with their name on it and they fill that up and they wash it up at the end of the day, and you've just reduced that amount of plastic going into landfill. So these businesses are on a journey. They know they need to do something. The majority of them, if not all of them, will have a turnover or an employee amount, meaning that by law they have to report on their ESG goals and reports annually. So if they're not doing that, or if there are other things they could be doing, how can we unpack that? How can we surface that? How can we then solve said challenge and then share that information with other people, so that hopefully as a region we hit our net zero goals, but then how do we roll that out nationally with what we're surfacing here in the Southwest?
And that's sort of talking about making small steps that fundamentally lead to huge change if adopted across a broader network such as ERA. More broadly, though, I guess, what does good look like for you in terms of the ERA network? What would you look to as a positive impact, a positive outcome for the work that we're looking to carry out in this?
So if I speak personally and selfishly, it's my legacy and my business partner's legacy that we are leaving behind. What have we done in business? We're only a small business in this area, but what have we done and how can we impact what other people and what other businesses are doing? That's my personal selfish view of all of this, and my passion for sustainability and climate. I'm a very active fisherman and love nature, and my favourite thing on a Sunday is David Attenborough, not the pub. But if I think about it from a business perspective, it is being part of this together with the University of Bath and Action Net Zero to be able to say at the end, okay, we took these huge organisations that have carbon footprints the size of a dinosaur's footprint. They're ridiculous. And we have managed to affect change across those organisations, which has filtered down into their employees, which is the community effectively. That is then going back out. And if we can see that positive impact as an organisation and what we have helped to achieve, that for me I think is incredible. If the organisations are able to do the same, I was with one last week that we were talking about exactly this subject, They're not involved in the ERA network this year, want to be next year. And they said, this is so thought-provoking, what you're talking about. I don't know why we weren't doing this 5 years ago. So it is just that awareness, I think, and how these organisations can become different and be better businesses for themselves, for the people that work in them, and the communities around them.
And Michelle, I know that recently this has been a huge amount of your work's gone into ERA, and you've got huge ambitions for the future. But tell me more around the school and the university's involvement in this, and how important you think that is.
I think for the school and for the university especially, the university's always had a drive to work with its local neighbours, be that the community generally or businesses. And I think it's just really important for the university to see that it is having that sort of impact and supporting change. We all know that sustainability, net zero, we know how important it's going to be for the future. And I think to know that the university has played a big part in supporting that locally is just really important to us. How that's going to look, and how we might measure that, I think as soon as, to go to your question just now, or Katie's question to you, I think once we see companies making those changes, I think once we see them saying to us, God, this was so valuable, this was so useful, and then we start to see the smaller sort of SMEs picking up on it and saying, my goodness, they're doing that. Actually, that'd be quite easy for us to achieve.
Yep. We
could achieve that too. We can make that change. And I think, again, to know that we have all played a part in that is just going to be, it's almost immeasurable, actually. I think to know that you've had and driven that change is just massive.
And without legislation or regulation having to do it, because at the moment it's 35 million turnover or 250 plus employees, and you have to adhere to certain rules, regulations and report annually. Why are we not all doing these things as smaller organisations, whether your turnover is 100,000 or 100 million? What does it matter? It's all about the planet. And my children are 17, 18 this year, and I know that other people around this table have children of similar ages. I could be a grandfather in 7 years, hopefully not, even less potentially, hopefully not. But what are my children growing up into, and what will their children grow up into? Because at the moment it's pretty bleak out there and it doesn't look very good. So what can we do to move that on and put it back in the positive arena?
And Michelle, you spoke about measuring change. And can we, either of you, speak a little bit about what you've done with the network so far? How have we started to tease out the immediate questions and what that might look like for the sessions going forward?
Yeah, I think it was really important to us to get a baseline sort of knowledge as to sort of where the companies and organisations that are working with us were on their own journey. So a questionnaire has been sent out to them, understanding sort of where they are on their net zero journey, but also where they are as far as nature recovery is concerned. So we've got a real sense as to sort of what are their initial priorities, where they want to be, where they think they are currently. Now, if in a year's time we do that again and they've improved on those scores, we'll know we're in the right direction. Have you got anything else to say to that, Dan?
No, I think it is exactly that. Some of these organisations themselves, some of their services are ESG related services and affecting change. But that might be just built environment. That might be just around decarbonising transport. So that they are helping in other areas themselves, but are there areas that they have challenges in? And is it purely around measuring their scope 3, their supply chain? Or so it's about bringing, but then also bringing their knowledge from what they've already done to the table with this cohort, so that we can share that knowledge, because it might be that they've got the answers to some of the challenges that the businesses in the room are facing, so we can very quickly close those challenges off and then focus on the stuff that doesn't have an answer yet, because not everything does, particularly when you talk about sustainability and ESG.
That's great. So illustrating there the power of the network and the power of sharing.
This collaboration, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So I think at the end of all of this, it's the importance of sharing the knowledge of the ERA network. So the cohort from the 29th of February and then the April meeting and then the summit on June the 6th, what comes out of that? So why would the businesses in our region, so this isn't just Bath, this is the Southwest, why would they want to come to the ERA network summit on the 6th of June?
Oh, I think the summit on the 6th of June is going to be an incredibly exciting event. I think that it gives the ability for businesses of any size, organisations of any size, to come together under one roof, learn from what has been happening with the founding members of ERA to start with, learn about some of the challenges faced and some of the solutions potentially, but also just to sort of bring people together to just discuss some of the issues that are happening out there as far as net zero are concerned, not just in Bath and Bristol, but actually across the Southwest, across the UK even. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no reason why anybody shouldn't be there. I think it's just a very exciting opportunity to bring people together to discuss one of the biggest issues that's facing us. And as you alluded to earlier, you know, this isn't something that's got to happen at kind of government level. We can't just stand around and wait. Actually, it needs all of us to take a part.
Yep.
And if that is coming and attending a summit and learning from other people's sort of actions, challenges, then, you know, it gives just a really good opportunity for people to come and learn and to start to put some action in place as well, right? This is not just about coming and listening and disappearing. We really want people to come, listen, and then action.
Exactly that. Yeah. So if you want to be a part of the summit on June the 6th, please sign up. We can send out the relevant information for you, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.